The Harold Grinspoon Foundation this week marked distribution of its 10 millionth book to young Hebrew and Arabic readers in Israel through its Siphriyat פיג'מה and Maktabat Al-Fanus programs. Together with PJ Library in the US, the program has provided quality books to hundreds of thousands of children. Reporter Nomi Segal heard more from Galina Vromen, Executive Director of the Grinspoon Foundation Israel.
The Harold Grinspoon Foundation established a program called PJ Library in the United States in 2005, and basically the program made aliyah in 2009, and we began to operate in Israel, and like what happens to an immigrant, it changed in the process, and we started in 2009 with 3,000 children distributing books in Hebrew that really spoke to to Jewish values, and also was intended to foment a love of reading and of books. Since then, we have grown from that modest beginning of 3,000 to today distributing to 250,000 children in Israel each month, books with Jewish values or about Jewish Israeli culture. In addition, we started in January 2014 a program in Arabic which talks about universal values, which strengthens Arabic language skills, and that goes to 100% of children in Arabic preschools in the national education system. The books arrive 8 times a year in a preschool by courier with a book for each child, the same book, and that's the book of the month. And there are also 2 classroom copies. The teacher introduces the book, does projects with the book, might do a theater or an art project, and then the book goes home and it stays at home. It's actually a gift to the family, and then it gets read again and it becomes part of the home library. So each year children get different books, which means that at the end of their preschool career in Israel of 3 years of preschool, they will have received from us a total of 24 books. That's the basic way it works. This year we also expanded to include the program to date until now had really been working only with the Ministry of Education, who is a full partner. They provide approximately half the funding and a lot of the pedagogical support for the program. And there are also other funders that support the philanthropic portion with the Harold Grinspoon Foundation. And we expanded this year also to include 2 to 3-year-olds working through women's organizations such as Vitzo, Emunah, and Naamat. And that program for 2 to 3-year-olds in daycare centers reaches approximately 11,000 children. So together with all these programs, we have now distributed in Israel, mostly with the Ministry of Education, 10 million books. And we are hoping in the future to expand to 1st and 2nd grade.
What kind of feedback have you received from the classrooms, from parents perhaps, about the project?
The feedback has been absolutely amazing. I think even in, say, families, first of all, the Ministry of Education has conducted a study which found that approximately in 37% of Hebrew-speaking homes that receive the program, the books of Siphriyat פיג'מה are either the only children's books in the home or the vast majority of the children's books in the home. So I think simply an impact of introducing books into homes that don't have them, it's been very important. For families that are reading families anyway, it's very different when a child comes home from a gun with a book that they are already an expert in, they have already been exposed to, and they say, come, I got this book, this is the Siphriyat פיג'מה book of the month, and really, wants to read it again with the parent, and they're the mumche, they're the expert on the book. And parents from relatively affluent families that have books at home say that the experience with those Siphriyat פיג'מה books is really different. The kid is coming from a different place. And I've had parents say to me, I learn more about what's happening with my child in school when he brings home a Siphriyat פיג'מה book, because suddenly instead of being non-committal about what happens in preschool, they're suddenly talking about what they did in the school with this, and they did this with this, and they played that with that. So it's perceived quite differently by the families. And in terms of the teachers, it introduces something fresh and new into the classroom every month for them to work with and to work on. And they also have, if they've been in the program for 5 years, say, they've received 40 books from us. and those books stay in the classroom library. That means that next year, a book that may have been distributed this year is still in those classroom libraries. So if the teacher did a successful project around it, she can still do the project even if the book doesn't go home that year. So it's enriched, I think, the possibilities for teachers. We send a newsletter out to teachers every month of ideas of what they can do in classroom that are book-related. And the parents also get suggestions at the back of the book of how the book can start a conversation or projects that they could do that are family projects or family activities that might be fun to do related to the books.
And how are the books chosen?
There's a book committee that is made up of members of our foundation, experts in Jewish education, Jewish scholars, and representatives of the Ministry of Education who sit and really review hundreds of books a year. We're always asked by authors, why didn't you choose my book? And the question is really, why did we choose the books we did? And there are many, many more wonderful books out there than what are suitable for the program. We really do look for, I consider each book list of 8 books a kind of, I look at it as a menu, as a full meal that has to balance classical Jewish literature, classical Israeli literature, modern literature, poetry, easy books, harder books. So it's a very complicated process. The book has to start out by being a really good book, but beyond that, there are a lot of good books that get rejected, sometimes for really stupid reasons. We've had years where every book we liked had a chicken in it. Well, you can't give 5 books out a year that have chickens in them or grandmothers in them. So sometimes we have had to whittle down the list, but we hope that in the end we end up with 8 really wonderful books a year for each child.
And that you contribute toward raising readers.
Yes, we really do believe that all the studies show that, first of all, reading from an early age is important from every point of view, both for the intellectual development and emotional development of children, and that children that are read to from an early age are much more likely to become readers later in life. And one of the things that I think people don't really realize is that when a child is beginning to learn how to read, it's hard work. And if a child comes to the task of learning to read with a lot of positive experiences around books, it makes the effort worth it. Because you know that reading a book is wonderful, so I'm going to have to overcome this thing of the alphabet. But if you don't have that reference point of viewing reading as a wonderful, warm, cuddly experience that you've had with brothers and sisters and parents and grandparents, it's much harder to make that effort to really want to overcome that obstacle that learning to read represents for a lot of children. And that's even more so for children who come from that it creates a love of books to begin with, an idea that books are exciting and fun, and that therefore that will hopefully stay with the child as they move on in life.
Galina Vromen.